team. And actually, while the team comes up, I think Dirk...
Okay.
Oh, no, we've got Dirk
Mark forward to see him.
and Liz. Welcome, Dirk and Liz. So we'll just perhaps get Dirk and Liz to speak first, post our really good meeting that we had last night, and so warm welcome to both of you. And I know there are some issues that you want to raise about this. Oh, we've got a handout from Stop Auckland Sewage Overflow Coalition. So which one, is it Dirk first, Liz first? Who would like to go?
Thank you, Councillor Hulse and committee members, for allowing us to be heard today. We've been requested to be very quick, so I'll just read this letter as it is. The submissions made on behalf of the Stop Auckland Sewage Overflows Coalition, the St Luke's Environmental Protection Society and the Manukau Harbour Restoration Society. All submitters support attaining superior water quality levels in Auckland's harbours, estuaries, beaches, aquifers, rivers and streams for ecological and health reasons. After attending yesterday's Auckland Council workshop on the proposed Western Isthmus Quality Improvement Plan, we congratulate Council on taking water quality seriously. That workshop focused on Council's recommended option 3 as outlined in your agenda. We've studied options 1 and 2 and believe these to be seriously inferior and untenable, especially given the projected intensification to the recommended option. Water quality in Auckland's Western Isthmus is unacceptably poor and needs urgent attention. As an example, the headquarters of the New Zealand Yacht Squadron, the holder of the America's Cup, has Auckland Council permanent pollution warnings for its surrounding waters. Because of time constraints, it is no longer possible to remediate this prior to the arrival of challenger teams, and that's if the Cup is being held in Auckland. We recommend Council accepts option 3 for the long-term plan, and this recommendation is, of support is in the context of an agreement reached last night by that our groups, Mana Whenua and others, have ongoing consultation with the Auckland Council team, as option 3 leaves many unanswered questions. And we expect this consultation to be on the basis of at least monthly, and at other times when major decisions or major information becomes available. The following comments outline some of the work still to be done during this consultation. Stormwater causes the polluting overflows in the Western Isthmus as a result of the combined wastewater stormwater system. When rainfall breaches the system capacity, overflows occur at a series of safety valve points which allows release of the excess as overflows. Separation of stormwater from wastewater is best practice. No utility these days would build a combined system as the current one is. More work needs to be done to achieve the maximum possible separation in the combined area. This should be a stretch target, and even if the expense is going to be a small overrun of your budgets, then it's worth doing, because you're removing the water from the sewage from the stormwater, and therefore it can never overflow. Where separation is not possible, practicable incremental stormwater removal from the combined system will further reduce overflows. This is the second way that you can reduce overflows, is by removing, instead of separating, by removing stormwater from the combined system. And this can be achieved locally with smaller pilot projects, and we request that these begin now. There's no reason why they couldn't be started immediately. More work needs to be done on stormwater treatment. Stormwater also has pollutants, heavy metals, hydrocarbons and other pollutants. And without treatment, heavy metals linger in the environment, and we recommend that no stormwater is discharged without at least having first flush treatment. We also recommend that councillors require council to seek notified resource consents for all new and existing consents where they're required, and as an example, we'll tell you about the consent, a non-notified consent, which is given in we believe, 2014 for 214 overflow points. The council applied for this consent to itself, decided it should be non-notified, and this legalises all the overflows that you're currently discussing. Hundreds of thousands of people are affected by those overflows, and I would have thought it would have been reasonable to expect it to be notified. Finally, we urge you to give water quality expenditure the highest possible grading when it comes to prioritising in the long-term plan, and there must be no further deferrals. Thank you.
Thank you, Duke. Elizabeth, did you want to?
No, thank you. It's a joint statement.
Okay, we'll just see if there are any quick questions, bearing in mind we've got the really comprehensive presentation by our team. Councillor Casey.
I'd like to second if you're moving.
No, we're just dealing with our submitters.
No, I've got questions as well.
Okay, right.
Liz and Dirk, it was just to say, I thought last night's meeting with Watercare and the council in Western Springs was a very good first start. And I just wondered if you had anything you wanted to say about that first step. My only question or point is that I'd love those meetings to be monthly in the first instance so that we get all our questions asked and answered. So did you have a comment about last night? And thank you to Councillor Hulls for attending. It was really great to see her there, our water champion.
And yourself.
We were overall very happy with last night's result, and we look forward to continuing contact with Craig and his team. In fact, we have a meeting with Craig tomorrow morning on matters that are not quite related to this, but other matters. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, so we endorse your monthly suggestion, particularly for the early stages of the community forum, and thank you for attending last night as well.
Enjoyed it.
And through you, Madam Chair, we're delighted to support the concept of getting together on a monthly basis. There are a number of unanswered questions at the moment, and the only way to go and resolve it is work around the table collaboratively together to talk them through.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Walker?
No, mine's for later.
Okay. Question, Councillor Lee?
Yes, first of all, I want to congratulate Mr Huddick and Mr Walker for their work in raising awareness of this issue. I think there's been a remarkable, if I could use the word, sea change in official attitudes over this year. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank the council officers, Mr McElroy and his team and Watercare for achieving this sea change. We're not there yet, but I note what Mr Huddick had to say about public notification. I'm aware that there is a diversion line which will remove the sewage contaminated stormwater going into Westhaven and divert it to out beneath the Harbour Bridge somewhere. I was briefed on this earlier this year, and I was very pleased when I was told that it was going to be publicly notified. Can Mr McElroy confirm that that is still the case?
I can most certainly confirm that is the case through you, Madam Chair, because the works are going into the CMA, and all works in the CMA, new works in CMA, require notification.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Right, that's questions from the presenters. Councillor Casey, would you like to move that we thank Dick and Liz for their presentation? I'm happy to second that. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried. Thank you both, and sorry you've had to wait so long, so please feel free to sit back, relax and enjoy the presentation you heard last night. So I'll hand over to our team, and I echo the points that we've made. Thank you for the work last night and over the last few months. It's appreciated.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm delighted to have Anna Nama from Watercare to support me this afternoon. In the interest of time, do you want us to go through the presentation or take it as read? Because I think a number of councillors have seen this material before.
We've had a couple of goes at this. Feel free to point out the highlights and then we can take questions.
Cool. So maybe if we just quickly jump through, I think everyone understands what this project's all about. Don't need to repeat that. We've been working on this actively for several months now. I don't think we need to dwell on that one. The key thing around the statutory framework is that we have a number of consents in place already that we'll have to comply with, and that the stormwater discharge consent has yet to be notified, and that will also be subject to a full public notification process. I don't think we're going to show the plume because it takes too long to load. The map on the drainage areas is just noting that we have a number of different typologies. We have separate areas, we have combined areas, we have a large area of soakage, and we also have some networks that are connected in the combined area, and then they revert back into, we have some separate networks that then revert back to combined as well. So it'd be fair to say that there are many, many different types of situations, and that's where the business case process is going to be so important, because until you get down to a property-to-property evaluation, it's very hard to determine the most cost-effective and optimal solution. And so that's the work that we're doing at the moment, is getting right down to that level of granularity. So those are the 10 catchments that we're talking about, and the key thing of those 10 catchments is they include the key streams, the Fowler, the Oakley, Motions, Meola, Edgar and Cox's. And this is all about obtaining a great water quality outcome in those streams, because if we don't have a good outcome in those streams, we'll never be able to deal with the beaches, and if we don't get the beaches right, we can't deal with the harbour. So it's a fully connected and joined up process. Don't need to highlight that we have a situation at the moment which is not good. And the project that is already committed is Watercare's Central Interceptor project. So this is all about leveraging off that investment to get best bang for our buck. And what you're going to see very shortly is that although the Central Interceptor deals with 2 of the largest overflows, it still does not deal with the residual overflows that occur, particularly away from the route of the main tunnel. So my view is we're building a motorway. Let's get the arterial network right to support the motorway so we get full utilisation of that motorway. I think that's, to my mind, the best analogy I can come up with to explain what we're trying to achieve. It's fair to say that the Lyons Avenue overflow, when it rains heavily, is actually Auckland's largest river at the moment. And so that's something that we certainly do not want to remain in going forward. The other thing I think that's important about this graphic is that water...
You just want to know where this is?
I couldn't hear you said there's something as the last...
Oh, sorry, that's just over the road from the St Luke's. It's by the St Luke's apartments next to Mount Albert Grammar School.
Sorry, I just wanted the name of it. I didn't hear.
Oh, Lyons Avenue
Thank you.
overflow.
Lyons.
That's all I wanted to know.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's all right,
Sorry
yeah.
for the interruption. Just hard to get context. If you
Yeah,
didn't hear what it
and
was.
so just on that graphic of the Watercare Central Interceptor, what's important is that Watercare are out to the market for EOI at the moment, and the plan is to progressively implement the project in stages. So the first stage of the Watercare Central Interceptor will be commissioned in 2023, then the second stage will be commissioned in 2025. So the benefits of the first, obviously the first tranche will be obtained as soon as they can, rather than waiting for the whole tunnel to be completed. We already have 2 committed projects. Central Interceptor Watercare is out to the market at the moment, and St Mary's Bay, at this stage, all going well, we will be lodging for resource consents in January or February next year. And the plan is to have the work in St Mary's Bay complete, all going well, by the end of 2020. Now, the big change that's occurred over recent times is the commitment from Watercare to extend the tunnel from Western Springs through to Grey Lynn. This is a significant step forward, and that's going to provide for 2 large overflows that occur adjacent to Cox's Creek, and that will make a huge difference to the servicing and reducing overflows in that area. At the same time, we'll be looking at a mix of new wastewater infrastructure and new stormwater infrastructure, both of which will support growth and achieve superior water quality outcomes as well. And as I explained previously, this is going to require a catchment by catchment approach. And we will be wanting to make this business case process transparent. So the stakeholder group that we're established to work through, they will be they will have full visibility of the business cases as they are prepared, and because I think that's really important to have that level of transparency. Total cost, it's a big ticket item, $1.825 billion.
Yep.
And at the moment, if you add up the Central Interceptor, St Mary's Bay and other committed projects in the first 10 years of the current LTP, that comes to, in round numbers, about $1.2 billion. And so we're actually asking for another $600 million in round numbers to be brought forward into this new LTP. And it roughly splits out about 320 odd for water care and 280 odd for healthy waters to get to that 600 million split. The other good thing is that we now have a program that we're prepared to stand up and be held accountable for. This is assuming we get through the LTP process successfully. I think there's nothing like a program with firm dates to keep everyone focused on the outcome that needs to be achieved. So the program is split into three components. The orange is the concept design and joint business case approval. The purple is the detailed design and the consenting. And the green is the tendering and construction. And so you'll see at the moment that this program is intended to be fully implemented through the 10 years of the LTP. And obviously work has already started on the Central Interceptor and work has already started on St Mary's Bay, and we're doing some scoping work in some of the other catchments in anticipation of where we will get to at the conclusion of the LTP process next year. That's just a summary of the split between the $1.82 billion. That is the current the money that I referred to, which is the 1.2 billion, and the purple is the additional 600 million. And this really, I think, is the money shot for this project. And so on the left-hand side, we have option 2, which shows the green infrastructure, which is the Central Interceptor in St Mary's Bay. And we haven't put the infrastructure on the right-hand side because the picture would get too messy with all the investments. But what we are showing that there will be 10 relief points remaining, which will be predominantly only overflowing with clean stormwater. So this will have a dramatic impact on our stream water quality and our beach water quality. And this will also obviously have a tremendous impact through the Safe Swim program. Because as you know, Safe Swim goes live on 1 November. And we know with the current configuration, the first time it rains after 1 November, we can have a number of beach closures within the Auckland region. And so this slide is just repeating that the objectives of the exercise, which are to reduce overflows, support safe swim, meet growth requirements, utilise existing infrastructure, and at the end of the day, really to give that community assurance that we are finally getting on and resolving this problem once and for all. There are some, like all projects, there's some risk associated with this. The new infrastructure that's been planned through this process is yet to go through a consent process. So the tunnel from Western Springs to Grey Lynn is going to require a new consent, but Watercare can run that process in parallel with their current procurement process for the Central Interceptor, because we're not actually going to get to Grey Lynn until 2025. So there's plenty of time to figure this out, get the appropriate consenting and commercial arrangements put in place. Where separation works are occurring, private property owners have objection rights, and so that will need to be factored into the equation. Some property owners may not be happy with the level of disruption that will occur on their private properties. And obviously we've got the big outstanding question around the affordability and the outcome of the LTP and the funding through that process. We also have to have a strict adherence to private drainage compliance, because it's no use spending all this money getting a really good network and then having people not doing what they are required to do with the way that they plumb their individual houses. And so compliance will become a significant issue for us. So here we are today, and the recommendation, it's a long recommendation today, but the key component is to get this project into the LTP. Mana Whenua discussions will be ongoing. We've got a lot of work to do with Mana Whenua, early days yet in that discussion. Already had presentations to a number of local boards, and you've heard already that we had a very successful community engagement process that kicked off last evening, and we will commit to run that process on an ongoing monthly basis, particularly through the next few months, as there are lots and lots of detailed questions to be resolved. And I think if we're successful in that community engagement process, it's also going to make the consenting process going forward a lot less tortuous as well. And that's a quick run through the presentation, and Anna and I are just only too happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, Councillor Walker.
Sure. I've got a few questions, and essentially part of the context is the lack of an overall water strategy on the part of council. So I've got a few questions. One particularly goes to funding and the immediacy of the long-term plan process, and that is, are you going to look at some form of targeted rate across these various scenarios? My reason for asking that is, obviously there are clear areas of benefit.
Yeah, exactly.
Those areas of
Councillor-
benefit
yeah.
vary.
So probably, Councillor, the wrong team. We need to be working through that with our LTP team and our finance team. These guys will tell us what we need to do and how much it will cost, and we then need to work out whether we want to negotiate or investigate a special rate and do that via finance. So we can't, Craig and the team can't answer.
Okay,
That
through you,
needs to
Madam
be
Chair,
us.
it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation.
Yep.
What Craig has pointed out is there are substantial differences across the catchment,
Yep.
and therefore substantial differences in cost to parts of that catchment, and that goes to a targeted rate that could well be different across that catchment. So that is my concern. So I just want to put that question on the table. I'm assuming that information's being fed into the long-term plan process. The other concern that I've got goes to the larger picture, particularly around climate change, sea level rise. Have we looked at resilience issues into the future, where the exit point of the interceptor is going to have an increase in sea level rise above it, and I don't know what heads we're looking at across this catchment in terms of its ability to work in a future where the sea level is going to be much, much higher than it is now, and we know that, and obviously we're going to have intensified storm events into the future.
Yeah. All of the work that both Watercare and Healthy Waters does takes all of the worst case central government advice in respect to climate change and sea level rise into account. That's just part of our business as usual. All the modelling and the assumptions are all predicated on a very different future to one that exists today.
And my last question again goes to this overall need for a water strategy, and particularly a lot of the work that's occurring in overseas cities, especially led in China now, where they talk about the sponge city, and the notion of actually trying to retain water, trying to use natural soakage, other forms of enhanced soakage and storage, rather than just, shunting the water out, which essentially is what we're doing.
Healthy Waters and Watercare are both massively supportive of a water strategy, and the reason we're bringing this to the table today, this is the number one priority current issue that this council is facing compared to the other water quality issues. This stands out as being the worst problem area we have. But we have another project which Andrew Chin is the program manager of, called Auckland's Water, and Andrew will be looking across the whole council group and with the wider community across the whole 10 yards, across, I think it's referred to as a 7 waters strategy from memory. You've got stormwater, wastewater, drinking water, groundwater, stream water, estuarine water and harbour water. Not sure if that adds up to 7, but it's pretty close. And so it's looking at the whole lot, and that project, I'm sure you'll be hearing more about that in the coming months. Andrew's just getting his head around the challenge that he's got at the moment and putting some programs together.
And my last question, Madam Chair, just goes to item D in the recommendations, where you're splitting up various types of investment, and that really goes to the information that you're putting forward to the long-term plan process. It may be easier to get some items over the line than others, particularly items that we can sheet to individual households through a targeted rate process, and especially around instances of separation, dealing with on-site issues that you've identified, so we can get on with the low-hanging fruit as quickly as we can.
So with D, what we've done is given our best estimate of where we believe the costs will lie from a healthy waters and water care point of view. I think from a family group point of view, whether it's water care or healthy waters actually doesn't make a lot of difference. But what we would also note is that this could change a little bit through the business plan process as we optimise and do value engineering on individual catchment outcomes.
Okay, thanks Councillor Walker, and just rest assured, as soon as there's something really grunty to come and talk to the committee about, Andrew will be coming to talk about the water strategy. Councillor Casey.
Oh, an offer to second if you're moving.
I will move, you can second, that's
Thank
great.
you. And I'd just like you, if you wouldn't mind, last night at the public meeting, or at the first meeting of the group, there was a claim made by Stop Auckland Sewage Overflow that senior councillors that they had approached had suggested a targeted rate for the Western Isthmus for this work in the Western Isthmus. And you very kindly stood up and put a lid on that, and I wonder if you'd do it publicly again now.
Yeah, I think that it seemed to me that people were a little bit at cross purposes, because the issue of a targeted rate for water quality has been put out there. My picture and what I understood that discussion to be was a regional discussion about a targeted rate for water improvements to cover everything that needs to happen in the region. I think it had then got sort of misinterpreted as the people whose homes were in this immediate area would be the people targeted to pay for this, which would be undoable. And I think that was the concern that was being raised. And I don't think that it's my, correct me if I'm wrong, members, but I don't think that's in anyone's heads. So we just need to be clear about that. Thanks, Councillor Casey. Righty-ho, Member Wilcox.
Yes, I've got a number of questions. It's a shame I didn't know about the meeting last night, but that's okay. So you mentioned that this is going on in other catchments as well, this discussion regarding the removal of sewage, or is this the only catchment that this is happening at?
This would, if you look at what's happening across the whole of the region, this is probably our biggest single problem area, but we have a number of other water quality issues we're grappling with as well. And so
we'll hear
I could take you all the way from Piha in the west to Little Oniroa to Aoraki Basin to Newmarket to Howick to Weymouth Beach to Green Bay. There's a whole host of areas that we have to deal with. What I did say at the meeting last night was that we can't do everything at once. So we have to be open and honest with our communities. We have to have a full and frank conversation around priorities. So if there was going to be a regional water improvement fund established, we need to be very transparent with the communities, what the priorities are and what order we would deal with issues, because we've got issues all over the region that we're going to have to grapple with. And the Say Swim program is only going to bring those to an even higher focus than they are at present.
Sustainable. So my second question then is regarding this kaupapa. is it all about safe swim, or is it all about other stuff as well? Because, I mean, what I'm trying to think of is, I thought the central interceptor was going to take all the sewage out, and what this is going to do is just put fresh water into the harbour, or clean water into the harbour. Is that where I'm?
So the problem is, if you go if you look at option 2, the overflows from option 2, which is the central interceptor by itself, that doesn't deal with, by number, the majority of the existing overflows. It does deal with the 2 largest overflows, but and it will have about a 65% improvement, I think, on overall water quality. The problem is that remaining 35% is spread over many, many separate locations, and it's that 35% that's going to still have a very adverse impact on not only good safe swim outcomes, but also we need to look at the overall ecology of the streams as well. It's more than just dealing with wastewater overflows, it's looking at the whole of the stream ecology as well.
So I suppose that includes the fish as well. From a Māori point of view, swimming is not an activity in itself, it's an activity in which to get fish or to get kaimoana. So, you know, we have various names. In Auckland's well known for that. Oonga, Oakley Creek, it's a story about inanga, about whitebait. Fau is a story about getting eels. Pitoito is a story about getting eels. Kaipatiki is a story about flounder. So what I'm trying to get at is, so are we heading towards that in 2028?
Look, we will be creating a situation that's going to certainly facilitate those sorts of outcomes. Now, how quickly nature is going to repair itself and how quickly these habitats get restored, but I can tell you from previous experiences, we've been quite delighted how quickly that the ecologies have repaired themselves. If you take the project we did with the daylighting in Green Bay, for example, we got some very encouraging results very early on in the piece with monitoring that stream for native fish and the like. So we were very pleasantly surprised in that environment how quickly the nature repaired itself. So we'll be creating the opportunity for that same natural repair work to occur. How quickly that happens, I guess, I can't say that with total confidence.
Yeah, I know this is probably one of the biggest decisions in a way we're going to make, and it does seem like we are having it without a huge amount of discussion, but bearing in mind we've workshopped this, we've talked with the community, this has been talked about for the last 6 months in detail. But Member Wilcox is absolutely right, there are still some unresolved issues that is part of this project, but more importantly is part of our wider Auckland Water project. I think we need to address those. Kaimoana gathering versus swimmability versus wade, water that's safe to wade in. The government haven't nailed it. I don't think we can nail it around the table here, but it's certainly a big bit of work in progress. So I'm going to put that recommendation. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Well done, team. It's a very big piece of work, and thank you for the partnership with Watercare. I also do want to thank our Stormwater Coalition, who in their own time, off their own bat and out of their own passion, are doing a huge amount of work in this area, and we look forward to working with them. So now we move on to the smoke-free issue, and welcome to Michael and Kimberly and the team. And I just also want to acknowledge the Cancer Society members who are still here and who've waited patiently all day to hear this item. So, over to you.
Thank you, Madam
Kimberly
Chair.
first.
Thank you. This report presents the smoke-free policy and the implementation plan for your approval. Just to recap really very quickly, in response to the stakeholder concerns which were raised on the 8th of August, and per the resolution that came from that meeting, a political working group meeting was held on the 21st of August. At that meeting, staff summarized the concerns that were raised by the stakeholders, and provided options for the political working group to consider for decision-making. The concerns and decisions that were made at that political working group meeting on the 21st of August are listed in a table in the report on page 116. Modifications to either the policy or the implementation plan that was resulted from that political working group decision process have been made in track changes on the attachments in the policy, which is attachment A, and the implementation plan, which is attachment B. So the track changes shows those modifications. And in addition, the Madam Chair graciously held a stakeholder follow-up briefing meeting last week on the 11th of October, where stakeholders were provided copies of the policy and the implementation plan with the track changes. This was an opportunity to just clarify the council's intention with the policy and the implementation plan, and it was an opportunity to ask further questions for clarification, et cetera. So all the parties that were present at that stakeholder meeting last week have endorsed the policy, the smoke-free policy and the implementation plan, which are provided for your approval today.
Thank you, Kimberly, and thanks, Mike, for your work on this. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. And look, I just want to acknowledge, firstly, yourself in regards to the meeting that's just been referred to. I see that Cancer Society is here. Just want to acknowledge them, and I don't know if there's any others that are here. But I know that leading up to it, we've had the industry, our district health boards, Haora. You know, I mean, look, it was just so awesome having 30 people there, and obviously with Councillor Cooper and her regulatory hat on in regards to moving forward with the stuff that she has to do, and Councillor Darby and also Councillor Collins. I mean, look, this has been a long time coming, and everybody's been involved with the smoke-free sort of work, and I just want to acknowledge all our staff as well. So, Chair, look, I'm just now looking forward to sort of getting this done, and then moving forward around the work that needs to get done. But it's not going to be the end of it, because I guarantee there's going to be other issues around smoke-free that it'll come to us. And again, I just look forward to sort of talking to all our community and organisations. So, well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Filipaina. I'm happy to second that. Member Wilcox.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'd just like to ask regarding your Maori Impact statement. Well, aroha for my whānau, because gee, you go to a hui and 2/3 of them seem to be smoking sometimes. It's quite sad. So the issue I've got here is, so which Māori did we talk to? Did we talk to any Māori about this kaupapa? Or have we talked to any Māori about this kaupapa?
Through the chair, we have been working very closely with Tihora Hapai, who's the Māori public health provider, and has the national contract for tobacco control for smoke-free. We did extensive consultation through the policy review process, which took place in 2016. And we currently have an action in our implementation plan that will request extra services to develop a Māori and a Pacific Island action plan specifically for this coming year.
Supplementary to that, I think the national contract's actually held by ProCare. So the issue I have is that where is the support for Māori? Because I think I have no issue with the policy. I mean, I was part of the workshops that created it. I think my issue is actually we're saying people can't do it, but it's still something legal. It's still a legal activity, purchasing cigarettes. And so my issue is, how do we support those groups, especially Māori who have a very high cancer rate and a very high smoking problem? How do we support those groups when we're actually not actually working with Māori with it?
So we just need, just to jump in, Te Pai Haora were very much part of this. They were at the workshop, they were at the follow-up workshop, and remembering that as a council, our job is as a support to the work that's being done by the Cancer Society, the Ministry of Health and Public Health. We don't fund cessation programs, neither do we provide funding for those programs. We put up signs, we denormalise smoking, and we work in partnership. So, and I know from my work out west with the Healthy Families team, the Māori groups engaged in this are fully engaged, and two things, they're the ones pushing most strongly for smoking cessation. They were involved very strongly in advocacy to retain smoking in here rather than vaping, and thirdly, they requested very clearly that we removed Māori from the connection with most vulnerable communities, that it, that we didn't view this through a Māori-only lens. So the partnership with Māori, in my view, I don't know, Councillor Filipaina, did you want to comment? But it felt strong, and certainly at the workshop, the Māori voice was strongly heard.
There was actually 3 groups that were there, and they have been. But I just wanted to reinforce, Chair's, your comment around the fact that council's not there to fund anything, but to support, and really to support the likes of all our organisations and communities. So, they've been definitely engaged all the way through this whole process.
Look, Madam Chair, it's not a criticism of our staff by any means, and I am aware that actually council do not have funds to say, here's $50, don't buy smokes. I think my question really boils down to the Māori impact statement. I think I would have liked to have seen that there had been engagement with Māori in the Māori impact statement, because it doesn't actually say it in the impact statement.
Chair, can I just say Te Oro Manuko as well? I'm sure you know Te Oro Manuko was made up of a lot of our Māori organisations.
This was for Manuru, eh?
No, that's the one that started off at the old Manuko days, because I was the councillor in the Manuko days with and Fire and Candy. So Te Oro Manuko was all our Māori organisations. They've been kept in the loop and also consulted around it.
Oh, I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Just would have liked to have seen it in the Māori
But I
impact
agree.
statement.
Fair point.
Should have been listed for you.
Yep. And that's sometimes when we're closely focused on doing, we forget to write down again what we've done. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I've endorsed Councillor Filipaina and comments around the fact that really we're one part of this really tricky puzzle. And other than banning tobacco, which is not our role, but and we know often prohibition just drives other bad behaviours. So in terms of a regulatory response, we've had a workshop last week, so I think our recommendation will come, Michael, next month next month. It is a big, it's an interesting conversation, because we all want the effects. We want people to stop smoking. We want to minimise all those risks, including social, financial, as well as the health risks. But we haven't got all the tools that we need to do that, and so I think we just have to do the very best we can do, play our part. And it was very good to have the interested parties at the table, people like Sally Liggins, at the table, giving our feedback and being able to respond to their views. And I'm also very pleased that we've just basically left vaping as it is at the moment. It's a difficult conversation because it can normalise the actions of smoking, but we've heard what a lot of the advocates have said around the fact that it can help get people off tobacco, and that's a really important thing, and reduces the amount of money spent, you know, taking that away from families. And so we've got to start somewhere, and I'm really pleased to support this adoption, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I've got Councillor Simpson next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to ask the question around signage. And will the signage be independent or be part of perhaps other signage that happens in an area? And have we got enough? Obviously this year we've got budget for signage, but are you going to do the work for the LTP on that sign, what the costs of the signage would be for the LTP? That's my two questions.
Through the Chair, yes, thank you very much. The areas that were identified in the original policy for Phase 1 and Phase 2, when we did the review last year, it was acknowledged that the rollout of signage in those had not been to the standard that was satisfactory. So the additional budget that was approved by the governing body for the capital spend this year was to get that signage up to standard for Phase 1 and Phase 2 and for the required implementation for signage for Phase 3. And we will then be on an annual basis seeking resource for any prioritised activities beyond that through the annual plan and LTP processes each year after that.
So if I may, a supplementary, because I do know when I was a local board chair, it started off by the local boards had, governing body created a policy, but the local boards had to fund the signage. So I just want to be really sure that in creating this policy, which has signage as part of it, that there will be budget that local boards don't have to find out of their budget, but there will be budget regionally that actually go towards the signage that will support the policy.
Through the Chair, that was exactly the issue that was raised through the review findings last year, and that was why the decision was made to set aside specific budget for implementation at the regional level rather than relying on local boards to be able to fund that.
So that should make local boards very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions, and I know they were discussed in the workshop the other day, and apologies, I was on other council business, and also Chris Darby is on other council business today, so that asked me to ask. But just checking, and Chris has sent a memo to Lester Levy, but just checking that it will include not, because we've already got a policy that includes bus stops and train platforms and things like that. Will is it definitely going to include wharves, council car parks, and the park and ride car parks? Apparently, according to AT, that it's not a drama, but Chris has sent that on to them.
Okay, so we can, I know there was discussion backwards and forwards. We can, sorry, we've got some wording here that we can simply add, and we can adopt. Could we? Sorry, councillors, it's a bit distracting. So we can just add to A, thank you, that. And that picks up the public wharves, council car parks, adds that to the little list.
Cool.
And Auckland Transport say it's no problem, they might help with funding, that feels like a useful thing. Okay?
Thank you very much.
I
Yeah,
think
and the
Councillor
other one-
Filipaina and I are quite happy with that.
The other one just with the, I know we didn't consult on commercial, but in the later, as we go on, we've got sports clubs and leases in there. But will, say for instance a driving range or other commercial leases on reserves, where does that exactly sit? Because I know reserves, council reserves and parks are already smoke free, but how do we, I guess where are the lines and boundaries, and just what's the work going forward on commercial leases on parks and reserves?
Through the Chair, so there is an item within the implementation plan at activity 1.9 which speaks more generally about the revision of those leases and contracts. So it doesn't specifically talk about commercial leases, but that could be encapsulated within that. That is something which in future years we can actually look at whether we want to identify specific activities that target those commercial leases, and that is still open to us as an option.
Okay, so is that something we could pick up a little bit down the line? Or are you saying we could added into the implementation plan now. I am just a little bit aware of loading too much into the implementation plan that we haven't actually discussed with the
Yep.
groups. I think we just
I think
need
we've
to,
Well
we-
discussed it.
we just need to walk quickly and then run. So my,
That order.
yeah.
Thank
So
you,
I'm
Madam
just
Chair.
seeking a bit of
I guess
advice.
the key point is that the policy is intended to be a long-term document. The implementation plan is a living and dynamic document which can have changes made to it. The policy itself has got provisions that would cover that, and the implementation plan can be updated to reflect the desires of the committee at a later date.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Oh, we'll just check quorum. Alf needs to stay in the room. That's good. Alf's in the room. Mike and Wayne are back. Phew. Okay, we're clear. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to speak in support of what's been moved and seconded up there. I think it's a very important moment in terms of the health of Aucklanders, what we're about to put to the vote. Also, just want to acknowledge and appreciate the work that had been done by that political working party as well, and the changes that were made to the policy to make it stronger. So well done to everybody involved there. Especially important, I think, around this outdoor public space areas, going forward with that for Auckland, where other councillors in other councils in Auckland and overseas have done that and done it successfully. So looking forward to seeing that implemented. So yeah, well done, and I'll be voting in favour.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Casey, did you have a question, or
Yeah,
did you
yeah,
want to
just
speak?
three
Yeah?
tiny ones, just
Yeah.
because we're tootling with it. I'm looking at the responses to stakeholder concerns, and I understand that you've done a bit of tootling yourself. If you've taken away the timeframes, it's possible that it could be 8 years before all our places are smoke-free. Are we not? Are we happy with that? Because I'm not.
Through the Chair, just to clarify, we're not taking away any timeframes, we're actually bringing forward the timeframes.
Bringing forward
So-
the timeframe, but it's rolling out in November 2017, but the only end point is smoke-free by 2025. And what I'm saying is that's too long. Can we not have an end point that says we'd like to see the rollout completed by...
One of the dangers of having a rollout that's completed by, that then becomes a target, and a lot of things don't aim to be finished until that date. The other thing is that with the roll-on and roll-off of a lot of our contracts, which this does relate to, some of those contracts may not come up for renewal for 2 or 3 years. So a target buy date that enables us to capture everything could push us into a date that is so far into the future that it wouldn't be palatable for those other things that we can begin to initiate directly and immediately. So this was something that we worked through with the working party, and the sense from that discussion was that we're better off to have this is the date we're going to start it from, rather than a target date in the future that would be so far in the future that it would become a disincentive for motivation.
So there's no answer to the 8 years that it could take to become smoke-free for all of our places to become smoke-free?
So the intention is that the changes would be implemented at the first available opportunity from November 2017. And that's why that start date of November 2017 was the date that was re-included back into the policy document.
Okay. My second one is, you've added in wharfs and council car parks. Does this cover all areas under the remit of Auckland Transport, of which there are many and various?
So there's two aspects to that. One is in that section 3.2.1 in the policy, it does say public outdoor areas associated with council. So it has got that catch-all phrase there. Things that are associated with Auckland Transport as part of the wider council family would therefore be captured by that. And so the list under that is some examples of, rather than every space included in that. The second point is the next bullet point you'll see down there specifically refers to train stations, platforms, bus stations and shelters and ferry terminals. So that is a specific reference to those hubs that are associated with Auckland Transport.
Great. And the final thing was commercial leases Is that in there anywhere, or is it just a...
That was just the question councillor Hills
Oh,
asked.
sorry, I
Yeah.
was being distracted on
That's-
this side of the room. What was the answer, quickly?
The answer is we
Yes.
can move to those, but as part of the implementation plan.
A rollout?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, right. I think that's everyone. Oh, councillor Walker?
Oh, just a quick quip. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have a spray-free policy and follow that through? But that's just a quip.
Righty-ho, I'll move on. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And thank you, team. That's awesome. And thank you to our partners for cheering us on and giving us a bit of a shove when we needed it. It's always appreciated. Thank you so much.
We always need a shove.